We may be about to see one of the most legendary transfer sagas ever unfold before our eyes, or this might all just turn out to be some top-end gamesmanship from Newcastle to either have their cake and eat it, or to really steal a march on Liverpool, as we see Alexander Isak's name continuously in the rumour mill with a move to Liverpool or a move to Arsenal or whatever, with Newcastle fans firmly in unison, convinced that their man is going to stay a Magpie for the upcoming season, and I think they're probably quite right. Alexander Isak has long stated his love of the Newcastle area has always been a big part of, the project, one of the marquee signings to kick it off. They've won the cup, they've qualified for the Champions League. There is really no reason to leave Newcastle at this moment, and Newcastle again are widely accepted and regarded as having a price for Alexander Isak's head, but it's going to be the thick end of 130, 140 million if they're to sell to someone else in the Premier League. But the reports we had coming out today was that Hugo Ekitike, whose name is normally not too far behind Alexander Isak's in the food chain and the hierarchy of striker targets for the likes of Arsenal and for Liverpool and a bunch of other clubs across European football, but it is actually Newcastle that have submitted the £80 million bid to Frankfurt to sign Ekitike, in a move that when I was setting up to cover it here on the channel I thought, wow, isn't this exciting? And we'll look at the possibilities that if they were able to get their cake and eat it, hold on to Alexander Isak and sign Hugo Ekitike, what a monumental transfer this would be for Newcastle. We'll also kind of look at the intimations or the permutations that maybe this is some gamesmanship for Newcastle, and we'll see how all that could unfold. And really, no matter what way this one's going to fall, I think Eddie Howe is taking on massive strides as Newcastle manager this season. We covered it in earlier content, talking about how the transfer policy and the way he's starting to manage the squad, coupled with the fact that he doesn't really need a sporting director above him anymore. He's kind of evolving into the modern day Alex Ferguson, the guy that's really running the club top to bottom, has got quite a keen and quite a obviously identifiable transfer strategy, has the full backing of the club, is incrementally improving the squad, and the way Newcastle are going, if they can keep all hands on deck, if they can keep everyone moving in the same direction, like, Newcastle are ready for an amazing period in their history. I can just feel it. This is the way the squad sits at the moment. Now, I know tactically towards the end of the season, Newcastle did manage to evolve in a different iteration, a different option, which Ekitike, if they were to get this signing over the line, would further enhance their ability to do. So I'm aware this isn't necessarily the way that they will shape up every week. But now that Elanga is in the building, James Trafford is probably not too far behind. Really, the top 16 or 17 players in the squad, if you look at the first 11 here, add in the likes of Byrne, Trippier, Murphy and Barnes, even if you don't want to talk about the Longstaffs and the Willocks or whatever, is a really that's the real core of the squad for Newcastle. Over the last couple of years, it's qualified for the Champions League now twice, and it has won the League Cup, but it does lack in depth, and it does lack in quality options that would allow Eddie Howe to mix in and shake things up a little bit, like we did see towards the back half of last season just there. And really, this striker position, now that Callum Wilson isn't really in the picture, this boy Osula never really got much of a crack last year, and although he's big mates with Elanga, I'm not too sure that's something that's going to change anytime soon. But the way it's always felt with Newcastle, and again I know Elanga's a new kind of element into the fray. Formerly this was Almiron, and in this season it was maybe Jacob Murphy at times, Jacob Murphy Ballon d'Or. Sorry, I mispronounced his name there the first time around. But if any of these guys in the front line, Gordon or Isak, were out, the main fear for Newcastle was they were losing depth, they were losing quality, they were losing goals that they couldn't replace elsewhere. The signing of Barnes last year was maybe brought in to ease that a little bit, although he had some injuries and whatever. Did have some moments of success. But really, where Newcastle need to get to next, they need to be in a position where in their front three, their midfield three, and in their defence, there's not an obvious best 11. Now, that's a really hard thing to achieve, and it takes a lot of clubs a lot of time to get their squad talent level to that sort of threshold. And Newcastle have been very deliberate and very methodical in their transfer window dealings over the last couple of seasons, bringing in young English talent like Lewis Hall, Tino Livramento to complement those sort of Anthony Gordon as well, of course, to complement the sort of superstar signings of Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes, Sven Botman I would add into that, as well as of course the aforementioned Alexander Isak. And they've went through times in this squad build where you can even look at it now, even with Hall, Byrne, Target, Kraft, Trippier and Livramento, you could maybe say they spent too much of their resources at the specific time that they did in some of these players, and that maybe halted a little bit of their progression in seasons gone by, but now they're really they're now capable, they're able to feel the fruits of their labour, to get their just desserts for the strategic planning that they've done, the talent ID that they've done, and sticking with the manager through all this, really, because I know Eddie Howe's had more ups and downs certainly, but in the Premier League those downs, they've cut out stronger managers in different positions over the years. Now, in the system we're more familiar to seeing Newcastle with, if they were to bring in Hugo Ekitike, well, I think the very first thing this allows them to do, bearing in mind they're going to have the same sort of season they had last year, a strong domestic cup run, aiming to finish top 5, but they'll also now have 8 Champions League games, probably 10, to factor into the war planning of the season ahead. And even in just the most familiar system we've got, Ekitike is a real upgrade for Newcastle, where for any reason you care to imagine, they could start Ekitike over Isak. They don't lose anything, they only strengthen their position. And even in those really big matches, when it's still tight, it's in the second half, bringing a guy of this quality off the bench doesn't diminish the task, and actually will keep the opponent on their back foot and will keep them worried that, the game's not finished yet, they need to keep going for it. And again, you might even see something working where Isak starts the Champions League, and then maybe, because there'll be 4 home games and 4 away, so you maybe notice around away matches or home matches, Ekitike plays the weekends and Isak plays midweeks. We might see little patterns like that evolve, and Newcastle just simply do not have the ability, the option to do that without Hugo Ekitike in the squad. And I think because goals is such a big part of Newcastle's game, they've got their defence back to be nice and solid. The goalkeeper maybe helps them level up a little bit. Newcastle need to cover their front line in goals. Murphy had a Ballon d'Or level season. Can he do that again? Who knows? Will Alanga keep up the sort of form we would expect him to? Time will tell. But we did see from Gordon, he had dips, he had peaks and troughs throughout the season. Barnes wasn't always fit, and the boy Cordero obviously and Osula are not really worth mentioning in this kind of regard here. It's been full pressure on Isak for goals and the rest of the team to chip in when and will they can. But the shape Newcastle moved into towards the back half of the season there is much more akin to what Ekitike has been very successful with at Frankfurt in the Bundesliga, and that is a bit of a 3-4-3, a 5-2-3, a 5-4-1, depending on how you want to think of it and how the game state actually evolves. Well, if Lewis Hall's fit and available to play left wing, although Livramento did that very successfully, of course, but you've then got a set of fullbacks that can do this job very effectively, that have a lot of room for improvement. A back 3, which even you could slide in Trippier here for any one of them, would probably be just as viable a candidate even at his age. Lascelles isn't bad depth for this either. And then having the likes of Joelinton, Longstaff, Lewis Miley and Willock as the depth in and around the centre midfield spots. It feels like Newcastle have the depth, have the quality, and have the right profile of player to be able to cover this off. It then gives a lot of freedom to Gordon, Ekitike and Isak to really build on the partnership. Like peak Gordon and Isak is one of the best partnerships in European football for me, and to add someone into that mix like Ekitike that can give it 2 sides. They're not just going to be all left hand side with Gordon transitioning and trying to find Alexander Isak for the finish, but they could also transition down the right with someone like Ekitike, have some support coming inside, and again you're looking for Alexander Isak to finish. You could even see Isak maybe dropping deep to get on the ball, and some rotations in and amongst this as well, which really keeps teams on their toes. And this could be big match Newcastle. Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes can do both sides of the ball. We'll go box to box, we'll go line to line, and really, this is an awesome team that really could take on anyone in European and world football, all being fit, all things being equal, and all the rest of it. But something new that will become available to Eddie Howe and to Newcastle with the signing of Hugo Ekitike is to play something maybe a bit more like a 4-4-2, where you could go back to that kind of strong back 4 we had up for the 4-3-3 in the first place, add Jacob Murphy Ballon d'Or back into the picture, ask Anthony Gordon to be more of a left midfielder, and then between Ekitike and Isak you've got a pair of strikers to press the back line as a pair, which Ekitike played very, very well with Marmoush as a front 2. He's a very selfless player, and again I think whoever does sign Ekitike will be winning a watch, and I could imagine him and Isak having a fantastic partnership, very similar players that could still complement each other. They then have the ability to have one of them pop off, get into space to then get the ball from midfield to then maybe supply the other one. And again, those types of rotations where they're not limited to one guy's the big guy and one guy's the fast guy. They are that interchangeable where defenders will really need to be on their toes with who's doing what. This could just be the third formation, the third kind of tactic that Eddie Howe and Newcastle need to negotiate all the games, all the fixtures are going to have, and to be as successful as they want to be. And I think the Ekitike transfer would be quite pivotal in making that happen. But they would still need maybe another little bit of reinforcements in and around that. Newcastle, by all accounts, have got a war chest this window. They do not need to sell any players for any given reason. And that's why all the Newcastle fans I talk to are super confident that Isak isn't going to leave. And this Ekitike transfer is only going to... it's only going to make Newcastle stronger. It's not going to be a replacement for Isak. But this is what I was saying in the intro. This could be elite gamesmanship or shithousery. I can see it at this point in the video because it's far enough into it, right? But Newcastle know Liverpool and Arsenal are deadly interested. I don't think they've got the money to make a deal like this happen. Liverpool do, and because they've just signed Wirtz, I think it would be unlikely that Liverpool would meet the valuation for Isak, right? But the only way they're going to is if they don't have an alternative to Isak in the market, which would be Ekitike. It's not going to be Gyökeres anymore. I don't think they're going to go after Sesko. You know, the tragedy that's happened at Liverpool, we don't need to talk about their situation in much detail. But if Newcastle take Ekitike, then Liverpool have to spend the money on Alexander Isak. And would this be the move where you sign Ekitike for 80 million? Well, Frankfurt want more, so let's say 95 or something, and you then sell the Isak for the money that you do want. It doesn't move the squad on, sadly. I think it remains par for the course. It does inject extra money into the team, which maybe you might see redeployed, and it might reformat the squad a little bit. But I think this would be, I know I just said it would probably keep the squad around par, but when you add the personal element and the battle scars, the yards won that this team has had over the last couple of seasons, and with Isak being a crucial part of that, I think removing him from the changing room and adding a new guy in, I think you lose something there, and I don't think that would be a good move overall. What it might also be doing is forcing Liverpool's hands, because they might still be buzzing around Isak. They might still be like, can we get him for 80 or 90 million? But if Newcastle just push the envelope and say, no, we'll buy Ekitike, Liverpool then might need to push the envelope and just buy Ekitike themselves. Ultimately then Newcastle eliminate their Isak problem and they can move on with their window as they were going to anyway. I really hope this is a genuine move. I really hope that Newcastle sign Ekitike, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was just chess pieces. Eddie Howe and the team just making sure that either if Liverpool are going to buy him, they pay every penny and they do it on their terms when they've already got a replacement in the building, or whether they do this just to get Liverpool to go sign someone else and leave them alone. But yeah, I'm very excited for Newcastle's season coming up. I think the Alanga move is good. I like the Trafford move whenever that materialises. And if the next level of signing going forward from here is Ekitike level guys, they need a guy like that in the front line. They definitely need another guy like that to come into the midfield to give that same sort of problem of you don't know what shape they're going to come out with every week, and if someone wasn't 100% suspended, injured, otherwise unavailable, you're not totally dead in the water. You've got another option. I don't think Willock, Longstaff and Miley are any of those guys for this season. Maybe with Miley in the future, Willock and Longstaff feeling like they've had their chance at this point. But there needs to be another high quality mid. They'll maybe just about get away with defence, but links to Scalvini will not go away for Newcastle. They've tried for Mark Guy. It doesn't feel like that move is going to happen. It does feel like they want another centre-back, but if it didn't materialise, I don't think it's the end of the world. But if they are trying to push this back three thing a bit more to be in like a regular system they do, Scalvini's been very successful in a back three, as seen as one of the Italian wonderkid defenders that is available. Has had a bad injury, is kind of recovered from it. And alongside Botman, like again, this could be a real good like move thinking seasons down the road. Might not make a huge impact this year, although I'm sure he would play, don't get me wrong. But the way the depth and the quality is, they can maybe just get away without another defender. But someone like Scalvini, I think, takes that question out of the equation entirely. They've got double fullbacks. They've got enough depth at centre back then for sure, even to cover the playing at the three at the back situation as well. And then yeah, it's just midfield really at that point. If you're to imagine they got Scalvini and Ekitike in here, it would just be this last midfielder. And then what a window and what a squad Newcastle would have at that point. Really, I don't want to say anything could happen, but genuinely anything could happen. Let's cross our fingers and toes. They keep Alexander Isak and they sign Hugo Ekitike. Maybe throw in a wee Scalvini and then go and get another marquee player, ideally in midfield from where I'm sitting, to make this season even better than last year, which sounds incredible. On screen are now some other videos that I've made that the YouTube thinks you might enjoy. If you did enjoy this video, please do hit the like button, subscribe for more, of course. Get into the comment section, tell me anything I got wrong, any players you would add into the depth chart, into the tactics board that we've been doing here, or any takeaways, thoughts and feelings you've had from watching the video. Thanks again for watching, stay out of trouble, and I will catch you on the next one.